The Lagos rain fell like tears from heaven itself, washing over the streets of Surulere with the kind of violence that only comes during the height of rainy season. Thunder rolled across the sky like the voice of angry ancestors. Chioma Okafor stood on the flooded street, her crutch slipping on the wet pavement as she clutched a worn Ganamusco bag containing everything she owned. Her traditional wrapper clung to her thin frame, soaked through, and the sketches she'd been working on, beautiful Ankara dress designs, were crumpled and bleeding ink in the rain. Behind her, the iron gate of what used to be her home slammed shut with finality. Through the wrought iron bars, she could still hear her stepmother Ngozi's shrill voice cutting through the storm. "Get out. I will not waste food on a crippled burden like you anymore. Your father is dead, and I owe you nothing." Lightning flashed, illuminating Chioma's small figure as she struggled down the slippery road. At 19, she looked younger. Malnourishment and constant stress had stolen the bloom of youth from her face. Her left leg, weakened by childhood polio, made every step on the uneven, flooded road a battle against gravity and despair. No roof over her head, no family left to call her daughter, only a fragile faith that somehow, God was still watching. She collapsed by the roadside near the bridge, rain mixing with blood from where her knee had scraped against broken concrete. In her trembling hands, she held a soaked drawing, an elegant gown with gold threading that spelled out hope in Igbo script. "Mama," she whispered to the sky, her voice lost in the thunder. "Will these cracks in my life ever shine again?" She didn't know that this stormy night would lead her to an encounter that would change her destiny forever. That the man whose car was about to round that corner would see not her disability, but the light she carried within. Drop your city in the comments. Her household had once carried the scent of fresh Ankara frying, the sound of gospel music from the radio, and the rhythmic hum of Mama Adana's sewing machine blending with her soft humming of traditional Igbo songs. In their small compound in Surulere, life was simple but filled with love. Mama Adana, a skilled tailor from Enugu who'd moved to Lagos to build a better life, had hands that could transform plain fabric into works of art. Every stitch was deliberate. Every pattern told a story. "Every stitch is a prayer," my Chioma, Mama would say, guiding the needle through colorful Ankara fabric. So sew with your heart, not with fear. Let your hands speak what your mouth cannot. The house was modest. 2 rooms and a small veranda where Mama set up her sewing table. But it overflowed with laughter and the smell of ukwa roasting, of jollof rice simmering, of the palm oil Mama used to make her famous egusi soup. At 7 years old, little Chioma already knew how to cut fabric with those big scissors that seemed almost as large as she was. At 8, she embroidered her name in golden thread on the head ties Mama made for church women. The little girl would sit beside her mother for hours, dark eyes following every steady motion of needle and thread, learning not just to sew, but to pour love into creation. Her father, Chidi Okafor, worked as a taxi driver, navigating Lagos's chaotic streets from dawn until late evening. He'd come home smelling of petrol and sweat, but always with a small gift for his sewing princess, sometimes fabric scraps from the market, sometimes Ankara wrapped in newspaper, once even a real sewing kit with shiny scissors that made Chioma squeal with joy. Life was simple, but full of faith and laughter. Then came that Sunday morning when everything changed. Mama Adana was sewing a dress for the pastor's wife, preparing for the church's Thanksgiving service. But her hands trembled slightly, and sweat gathered on her forehead despite the morning coolness. "Mama, are you well?" Chioma asked, placing a small hand on her mother's arm. "Just a small headache in WAM. Keep singing your hymns." But as Chioma began to sing, "What a friend we have in Jesus," the needle slipped from Mama's hand and clattered to the concrete floor. The sunlight streaming through the window seemed to freeze in that moment. The doctor at the general hospital said Mama Adana had a severe heart condition. High blood pressure, they called it, made worse by years of stress and poor diet. She needed rest, medication, and less work. But even bedridden, Mama still tried to sew from her mat, stitching church robes and children's clothes because the Lord gave me these hands to use, and I must use them until he calls me home. 9-year-old Chioma became her mother's assistant, bringing water, crushing medications, wiping her mother's fevered brow with cold cloths. "Mama, please rest. Stop working." Mama Adana smiled weakly, her once strong hand now fragile as it cupped her daughter's cheek. "You must learn to work through pain, Chioma, because sometimes light comes through the cracks." Then one still morning, Chioma woke to an unnatural silence. No humming, no sewing machine, no gospel music. She ran to her mother's room, her heart already knowing what her mind refused to accept. Mama Adana lay there, eyes gently closed, her lips curved into the faintest smile. On the table beside her lay a broken wooden bracelet, split perfectly in half, as if waiting to be shared, and a note in shaky handwriting, "For my Chioma, may you always find light in the cracks." Chioma sat for hours in silence, holding that broken bracelet close, whispering through tears that wouldn't stop falling. "Mama, I'll keep sewing your dreams. I promise." The funeral was small but emotional. Women from the market wept, remembering how Mama Adana had sewn their wedding wrappers, their children's Sunday clothes, had given credit when times were hard. The pastor spoke of a woman whose hands had blessed many. But for Chioma and her father, the house had become a tomb. Too large, too empty, too silent. Papa Chitty tried his best. He smiled every morning, made Gary in soup, braided his daughter's hair with clumsy fingers, doing everything to fill a void that could never be filled. But grief is like water. It finds every crack, seeps into every corner. 6 months after Mama died, another tragedy struck. Papa Chitty's taxi was involved in an accident on 3rd Mainland Bridge. A Danfo bus driver, high on drugs, had swerved into his lane. Papa survived, but his leg was crushed. The medical bills drained every kobo they'd saved. And when infection set in, the doctors at the government hospital, understaffed and overwhelmed, couldn't save his leg. They amputated above the knee. Papa came home different, not just physically but spiritually. The man who used to joke and sing now stared at walls for hours. Unable to drive, unable to work, he drowned in bitterness and the local gin called Ogogoro. 12-year-old Chioma learned to cook, clean, and care for a father who sometimes didn't recognize her through his drunken haze. "Papa, I made pepper soup. Please eat." He'd waver away. "Leave me alone, child. I'm useless now. Just like you with your weak leg." The words cut deeper than any knife. Chioma had contracted polio as a baby. The free vaccination had come too late to their village before they moved to Lagos. Her left leg was thinner, weaker, requiring a brace and then a crutch as she grew. She'd learned to live with the stares, the whispers, the children who called her Kako leg. But hearing it from her father's mouth was a different kind of pain. Then came Ngozi Ease. Ngozi Ease appeared in their lives like a solution to prayer, or so Papa Chitty believed. She was a trader at Balaga Market, selling fabrics and accessories. Loud, confident, always dressed in expensive Ankara with matching Gelly wrap high on her head. Her makeup was always perfect, dark lipstick, drawn eyebrows, skin bleached to an unnatural lightness. She met Papa Chitty at a beer parlor in Suralere where he'd gone to drown his sorrows. She bought him a drink, listened to his story, sympathized with theatrical tears. "Ah, brother, life has been wicked to you, oh," she'd said, her voice dripping with false honey. "A man like you shouldn't suffer alone. You need a woman to take care of you and that daughter of yours." Papa, broken and desperate, saw kindness where there was only calculation. They married 3 months later at the registry, a small ceremony with a few witnesses. 14-year-old Chioma stood in her late mother's blue wrapper, watching this strange woman sign papers that made her stepmother. At first, Ngozi seemed loving. "Call me Mama Ngozi, my dear," she said, helping braid Chioma's hair, cooking elaborate meals, telling stories from her village in Delta State. Papa Chitty smiled again. "See, daughter, God still answers prayer. He sent us a helper. But false love reveals itself slowly, like mold growing in darkness." The change began subtly. Ngozi would sigh heavily when serving Chioma's food. Ah, this girl eats so much for someone who doesn't work. She'd criticize Chioma's walking. Can't you move faster? You're as slow as a snail. When Papa traveled to his village for a family meeting, Ngozi's mask fell completely. Wash all these plates. Scrub that bathroom. And fold all my wrappers properly. Chioma obeyed silently, her crutch making the work twice as hard. But one evening, exhausted from school and housework, Chioma missed cleaning a few pots. The slap came without warning, sharp, vicious, leaving Chioma's cheek burning and her ears ringing. You think your useless leg gives you privilege? Ngozi hissed, her painted face twisted with contempt. You're nothing but a burden in this house. If not for your father, I would have thrown you out long ago. Chioma fell, her crutch clattering across the floor. I didn't mean. Shut up. Ngozi grabbed her by the hair. You want to tell your father? Go ahead. Who will he believe? His new wife who cooks and cleans and satisfies him? Or his crippled daughter who does nothing but consume? That night, Chioma hid under her thin blanket, clutching the broken bracelet Mama had left, tears soaking her pillow. The abuse became routine. When Papa was home, Ngozi played the perfect stepmother, sweet voice, gentle touches, elaborate meals. Chioma is such a good girl, she'd tell Papa, then order the girl to serve more food while pinching her arm hard enough to bruise. On the phone with Papa, when he was working, Ngozi's voice dripped with false concern. Chioma is fine, studying hard, eating well. Then she'd hang up and hiss, useless girl. Your mother died and left you as my burden. Money began disappearing. Chioma noticed when her school fees wasn't paid. When neighbors asked about the missing funds, Ngozi smiled sweetly. I used it for her poor mother's hospital debts. Someone had to pay. She should be grateful. Chioma stayed silent. Deep down, she believed God was watching, that somehow truth would surface. One humid evening, after Ngozi had spent the day at her lover's house. Yes, Chioma knew about the man who visited when Papa was away. The stepmother came home drunk and angry. You think I don't see you sketching those useless drawings? She grabbed Chioma's sketchbook, the one where the girl poured her mother's dreams onto paper. A cripple dreaming of becoming a designer? Pathetic. Useless. Stupid girl. She ripped the pages apart, scattering them across the floor like confetti of broken dreams. Chioma stood frozen, watching her designs, dresses she'd planned to make when she saved enough money, patterns she'd copied from her mother's old books, torn into pieces. Dreams don't buy food, you fool, Ngozi spat. Your mother was a foolish woman who died from working too hard on nonsense. You want to die like her? That night, Chioma quietly gathered the torn sketches and pressed them between the pages of her mother's old Bible. She'd kept it hidden under her mattress along with a broken bracelet, and she swore silently, they can take everything, but I will sew again. With faith. 2 years passed. Chioma turned 16, then 17. Life became a pattern of survival. Endure Ngozi's abuse. Go to school when she could afford the fees, sketch designs in secret, and hold on to the fading memory of her mother's love. Then came that terrible phone call. Papa Chitty had gone to Onitsha for a taxi driver's union meeting. He'd called 2 days earlier, his voice warm. When I come back, we'll go to the fabric market. You can pick materials for your sewing projects. Chioma's heart had soared. Maybe Papa was finally seeing through Ngozi's act. Maybe things would get better. But on the third day, instead of Papa's return, police officers came to the door. Madam Okafor? The sergeant's voice was grave. There was an accident. Chitty Okafor. I'm sorry. He didn't survive. The words made no sense. Chioma heard screaming. Only later did she realize the screams were coming from her own throat. Ngozi wailed dramatically for the visitors, but Chioma saw it, the quick flash of relief in her stepmother's eyes. The calculation already spinning behind those tears. The funeral was rushed, cheap. Ngozi claimed there was no money, but Chioma noticed her stepmother wearing new gold jewelry the week after Papa was buried. At the cemetery, as they lowered Papa into the red Lagos earth, Chioma felt the last anchor in her life cut loose. She was truly alone now. The real nightmare began immediately after the funeral. "This house belonged to your father," Ngozi announced the next morning, her voice cold and businesslike. "But I am his wife. Legally, everything is mine now. But Mama left me." "Your mother left nothing," Ngozi screamed. "She died poor and useless, just like she lived. And now you're my responsibility?" "I don't think so." She grabbed Chioma's arm, her nails digging in. "You have 2 weeks to find somewhere else to stay. I'm bringing my sister to live here." "Where will I go? I have no one." "That's not my problem." For 2 weeks, Chioma lived in terror. She tried to contact her father's distant relatives, but Ngozi had already called them with lies. "The girl is disrespectful, disobedient. She's making my life hell." When Chioma tried to explain, they didn't want to get involved. "Family problems," they said. "We can't interfere." On the 15th day after Papa's death, it happened. That evening, the sky opened up. One of those Lagos rainstorms that floods streets and stops traffic. Chioma sat at the small table on the veranda, working on a sketch by candlelight. Ngozi had stopped paying electricity bills. She was designing what she called the Phoenix wrapper, a traditional style that incorporated golden threads representing rising from ashes. It was her most ambitious design, her hope for a better future. Ngozi came home drunk, makeup smeared, reeking of cheap perfume and cigarettes. A man Chioma didn't recognize was with her, younger, flashy, wearing fake designer clothes. "Baby, this is the house," Ngozi slurred. "Nice ABI?" The man looked around, then his eyes fell on Chioma. "And who is this one?" "Your daughter." "Her? She's nobody. Just my late husband's burden. But she's leaving today." Chioma's heart stopped. "What?" Ngozi grabbed her sketches and threw them out the door into the rain. "I said get out. Pack your useless things and leave my house." "But it's raining. Where will I? Do I look like I care?" Ngozi grabbed the Ghana Musco bag Chioma used for school and began throwing in her few clothes. 3 wrappers, 2 blouses, underwear, the broken bracelet, her mother's Bible. "Please, Auntie Ngozi, please." Slap. The force knocked Chioma against the wall. Her crutch fell. Blood trickled from her split lip. "Don't call me Auntie. I'm not your family." Ngozi threw the bag out into the flooded street. "Now get out before I call area boys to throw you out like the garbage you are." The man laughed cruelly. "Makes you go Jer. I don't want Walla for this house." Chioma stumbled outside, her crutch slipping on the wet concrete. Neighbors peeked through their windows, but quickly looked away. Nobody wanted problems with the loud Madame Ngozi. The iron gate slammed shut behind her with finality. Through the bars, Chioma saw her stepmother already kissing the strange man, her laughter echoing into the storm. And Chioma stood there in the rain, crying, broken, with nowhere to go. The rain showed no mercy. Within minutes, Chioma was soaked to the bone, her wrapper clinging to her thin frame, her crutch slipping on the flooded pavement with every step. She walked without direction, just away from that gate, away from that voice, away from the last place she called home. The sketches in her bag were already bleeding ink, beautiful designs dissolving into abstract watercolors of despair. But she held the bag close anyway. It contained everything she owned in the world. By the time she reached the bridge near Costain, her leg was screaming in pain. The polio had left her muscles weak, and the exertion combined with stress was too much. She collapsed on the wet roadside, her crutch clattering away, rolling toward the gutter. Blood seeped from her scraped knee, mixing with the rain and dirt. Cars passed, some slowing to look, but none stopping. This was Lagos. Everyone minded their business. A girl on the roadside in the rain? Probably a runaway. Probably trouble. Keep driving. Chioma pulled out one of the wet sketches, the Phoenix wrapper design, now blurred and ruined. She laughed bitterly through her tears. "Mama," she whispered to the dark sky, "you said light comes through the cracks. But I'm all cracks now. Where's the light?" Thunder answered her. Lightning flashed. And then headlights. A black Range Rover Sport pulled up beside her, its gleaming body a stark contrast to the dirty floodwater. The engine purred softly as the driver's window rolled down. "Are you all right?" The voice was deep, concerned, speaking English with that particular accent of Nigerians educated abroad but proudly African. Chioma looked up, rain streaming down her face. Through the blur of water and tears, she saw him. He was perhaps in his mid-30s, dark-skinned with a neatly trimmed beard, wearing an expensive agbada that somehow stayed pristine despite the storm. His eyes were what struck her most. Not pity, not disgust at her wet, bedraggled appearance, but genuine concern. I'm fine, Chioma lied, trying to stand. Her leg gave out immediately, sending her sprawling back to the ground. The man didn't hesitate. He opened his door and stepped out into the rain, heedless of his obviously expensive clothes. You're hurt. He bent down, examining her bleeding knee. What's your name? Chioma. Chioma. Beautiful name. Light of God, yes. She nodded, surprised he knew the Igbo meaning. I am Emeka. Emeka Okonkwo. And you're clearly not fine. He looked at the Ganamusko bag, the crutch in the gutter, her swollen eyes. Do you have somewhere to go? The kindness in his voice broke something in her. Fresh tears came, mixing with the rain. No, I have nowhere. Most people would have driven away. Would have given her some money and a phone number for a shelter. Would have felt they'd done their good deed for the day. Emeka Okonkwo did something different. Then come with me. No questions, no conditions. Just come out of this rain. I don't know you. How can I? Because, he said gently, retrieving her crutch from the gutter and cleaning it with his expensive handkerchief. Because I was taught that when you see someone drowning, you don't ask for their credentials before throwing them a rope. He helped her up with surprising gentleness, supporting her weight as she hopped on one leg to the car. He opened the back door, helped her in, then retrieved her bag from the rain. As the car pulled away from that terrible roadside, Chioma looked back one last time at the direction of her old home. Somewhere in Surulere, Ngozi was probably already celebrating, free of her burden. But here, in this warm car that smelled of leather and expensive cologne, a stranger had seen her not as a burden, but as a human being worthy of help. Where are we going? She asked quietly. My house. My sister is a doctor. She'll look at your knee. Then we'll figure out the rest. One step at a time. Why are you helping me? Emeka met her eyes in the rearview mirror. My mother used to say that God places people in our path for a reason. Maybe I'm supposed to help you. Or maybe you're supposed to help me. We'll see. Chioma clutched her bag, feeling the broken bracelet inside through the wet fabric. And for the first time in years, she whispered a prayer that felt like it might actually reach heaven. Thank you, God. Thank you. Outside, the rain continued. But inside the car, something new was beginning. Something that looked surprisingly like hope. The gates opened to reveal something Chioma had only seen on television. A massive compound with manicured lawns, fountains, and a mansion that seemed to glow even in the rain. This is where you live? Her voice was barely a whisper. Emeka smiled gently. It's just a house. Come, let's get you dry and warm. A woman in her early 30s rushed out with an umbrella. His sister, Dr. Adiz Okonkwo. She took one look at Chioma's condition and immediately went into doctor mode. Emeka, what? Never mind. Bring her inside quickly. She's shivering. Within minutes, Chioma found herself in a guest bathroom larger than the entire room she'd shared with her father. Warm towels, a soft robe, and Dr. Adiz's gentle hands cleaning and bandaging her knee. You're malnourished, Adiz observed quietly. When did you last eat a proper meal? Chioma couldn't remember. Maybe 3 days ago. Ngozi had stopped cooking for her weeks before Papa died. I'll have the cook prepare something light. Your stomach needs to adjust. She finished wrapping the bandage and looked Chioma in the eye. I don't know your story yet, but I know my brother. If he brought you here, it's because you needed help. So please, let us help. That night, Chioma slept in a bed so soft she thought she was dreaming. Clean sheets that smelled of lavender. A room with air conditioning. No rats scurrying in the ceiling. No fear of Ngozi's voice shrieking at her. She cried herself to sleep, but this time the tears were different. Mixed with grief was something else, gratitude, relief, hope. The next morning, she woke to sunlight streaming through silk curtains. For a moment, she panicked. Where was she? Then memory returned, along with the smell of breakfast. Downstairs, The dining table was set with enough food to feed 10 people. Akara, moi, yam porridge, fraîche fruits, orange juice, tea. Emeka sat at the head of the table, reading newspapers on an iPad. He looked up and smiled. Good morning, Chioma. Please sit. Eat. She hesitated. Sir, I don't know how to repay. By eating, he interrupted gently. That's payment enough for now. As she ate slowly, Adiz had warned about eating too fast after malnutrition. Emeka studied her. Tell me about those sketches you were holding in the rain. Chioma froze mid-bite. They're nothing. Just foolish drawings. May I see them? Reluctantly, she retrieved the Ghana Must-Go bag. The sketches were dried but badly damaged. Ink smeared, paper wrinkled. She spread them on the table, embarrassed. Emeka picked up the Phoenix wrapper design. Even ruined, the concept was clear. Traditional Nigerian wrapper with modern cuts, golden threading that formed the pattern of a bird rising from flames. He was silent for so long that Chioma began to panic. I'm sorry, they're stupid. I shouldn't have. These are brilliant, he breathed. Who taught you to design? My mother. Before she died. She was a tailor. And you've been continuing her work? Chioma nodded, tears threatening again. I try. But Ngozi, my stepmother, she said it was useless. That a disabled girl like me could never. Stop. Emeka's voice was firm, but not unkind. Don't repeat other people's lies about yourself. These designs show talent, vision, and heart. That's not useless. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at his gardens. Chioma, do you know what I do? No, sir. I own a fashion company. Okonkwo Couture. We design high-end African fashion for the international market. And we're about to launch a new line called Phoenix Rising, designs that celebrate African women who've overcome hardship. He turned back to her. I think you might be exactly what this project needs. Not as charity, but as genuine talent. Chioma's head spun. Sir, I can't. I have no training, no certificates. I didn't even finish secondary school properly. But you have something more important. You have vision. And you understand pain, which means you understand hope. Those are the designs the world needs. That afternoon, Emeka took her to Okonkwo Couture's headquarters in Victoria Island. The building was sleek glass and steel, the lobby filled with photos of beautiful models in stunning African-inspired designs. Workers stared as Emeka walked in with a thin girl in borrowed clothes, using a crutch. Whispers followed them. Who is that? Why is Oga bringing her here? She looks like a beggar. Chioma felt shame burning her face, but Emeka either didn't notice or didn't care. He led her to the design studio, a massive room filled with fabrics, mannequins, sewing machines, and designers bent over tables. The head designer, a sharp-eyed woman named Mrs. Beatrice, looked up and frowned. Emeka, what is this? This is Chioma. She'll be joining the Phoenix Rising project. As what? An intern. As a designer. The room went silent. Mrs. Beatrice's frown deepened. She's a child. With no credentials. You can't be serious. I'm very serious. He spread Chioma's ruined sketches on the nearest table. Look at these. Look at the vision. The integration of traditional and modern. The symbolism. Mrs. Beatrice studied them, her expression unchanging. Then she looked at Chioma. Did you really design these? Yes, Ma. How old are you? 19, Ma. And your training? My mother taught me. She was a tailor. Mrs. Beatrice's expression softened slightly. Can you sew? Yes, Ma. Not as well as Mama, but I can. The older woman handed her a piece of Ankara fabric and pointed to a sewing machine. Show me. Sew a straight seam. Chioma's hands trembled as she sat down. Every eye in the studio watched her. She positioned the fabric, her foot finding the pedal despite her weak leg. The machine hummed to life. She guided the fabric through slowly, carefully, the way Mama had taught her. Not fast. Fast led to mistakes. Honest and steady. When she finished, Mrs. Beatrice examined the seam. Not bad. Your tension is slightly off, but the line is true. She looked at Emeka. She has raw talent. But raw isn't ready for Phoenix Rising. Then train her, Emeka said simply. Emeka, train her, Beatrice. Give her 3 months. If she can't keep up, I'll accept that. But give her a chance. Mrs. Beatrice sighed. Fine. But don't say I didn't warn you. She turned to Chioma. You start tomorrow, 8 a.m. sharp. We work hard here. Can you handle that? Chioma straightened her shoulders. Yes, Ma. I can handle anything. The next 3 months were the hardest of Chioma's life. Not because of cruelty, but because of the sheer intensity of learning. Mrs. Beatrice was a strict teacher, demanding perfection. Redo that seam. The tension is wrong. This hemline is crooked by 2 millimeters. Fix it. Your color choices are too safe. Push boundaries. Other designers in the studio resented Chioma. They'd worked for years to get their positions, had degrees from fashion schools, portfolios filled with experience. And here was this girl, disabled, uneducated, clearly Emika's charity case, given opportunities they'd had to fight for. A designer named Tolu was particularly cruel. Ah, Olga's pet project, she'd sneer when Emika wasn't around. Using your sob story to get ahead? Smart. Chioma said nothing. She just worked harder. She arrived before everyone else and left after everyone went home. Her fingers bled from needle pricks. Her back ached from hours bent over the sewing table. Her weak leg throbbed from standing, but she refused to sit when others were standing. At night, in the comfortable guest room Emika had given her, he'd insisted she stay until she was back on her feet. She'd practice sketches by lamplight, pushing her imagination further. Dr. Adiz became like an older sister. She checked Chioma's health weekly, made sure she ate properly, talked to her about life beyond fashion. You know, Adiz said one evening, Emika hasn't brought anyone home since our mother died 3 years ago. You've awakened something in him. Not romantic, don't misunderstand. You've reminded him why he started this company. To elevate people, not just make money. Chioma learned that Emika's mother had been a village woman who'd sewn clothes to send her children to school. She died of preventable illness because they couldn't afford good health care in time. Emika had built his empire in her honor. That's why he saw you on that roadside and stopped, Adiz explained. He saw his mother. Saw every woman who's been dismissed because of poverty or disability or circumstance. One afternoon, Mrs. Beatrice called Chioma to her office. Closed the door. Chioma's heart raced. Was she being let go? I've been watching you, Mrs. Beatrice said. 3 months ago, I thought Emika was being foolish, sentimental, but I was wrong. She pulled out a folder. These sketches you've been submitting for the Phoenix Rising line, they're extraordinary. Not technically perfect yet, but the soul in them. I haven't seen that kind of passion in years. She handed Chioma a piece of paper. This is a contract, part-time designer position with full benefits. You'll continue training, but you'll also be credited on pieces you contribute to. Your work will be seen worldwide. Chioma stared at the paper, tears blurring the words. Ma, I can't believe. Believe it, child. You earned this. Mrs. Beatrice's stern face softened. Your mother would be proud. That night, Chioma called the only phone number she still had memorized, her father's old friend, Uncle Festus, who'd attended Papa's funeral. Uncle Festus, it's Chioma. I wanted you to know, I am okay. I'm working now, as a designer. His voice was warm with relief. Chioma, we heard Ngozi threw you out. Some of us wanted to help, but didn't know where you went. Thank God you're safe. Uncle, can you tell me what happened to the house? To Ngozi, there was a pause. That woman. She sold your father's taxi. Sold the house too. It wasn't even legally hers to sell, but she forged documents. Last I heard, she moved to a big flat in Bogota with her boyfriend. Flashing money everywhere. Rage burned in Chioma's chest. Her father's house. Her mother's memories. Sold like they meant nothing. But remember, Chioma, Uncle Festus said gently, God sees everything. That woman will answer for what she did. After hanging up, Chioma pulled out her mother's broken bracelet. She'd been carrying it everywhere, like a talisman. Mama, she whispered, I'm going to make you proud. And I'm going to show Ngozi that throwing me away was the biggest mistake of her life. 6 months after Chioma started at Okonkwo Couture, Emika called an emergency meeting. There's an international competition, Africa Fashion Week in South Africa. The theme is Rising from Ashes, Stories of African Resilience. The winner gets international distribution, a feature in Vogue Africa, and a cash prize of $50,000. He looked around the room. I want Okonkwo Couture to enter, and I want Chioma to lead the design. The room erupted. She's barely been here 6 months. We have senior designers with years of experience. This is madness. Mrs. Beatrice stood up, silencing everyone. I support this decision. All eyes turned to her. She was known for being impartial, never playing favorites. Chioma understands the theme better than any of us, Mrs. Beatrice continued. She's lived it. Her designs won't just represent resilience, they'll embody it. The judges need to feel truth, not just see beauty. She can deliver that. Emeka nodded. Chioma will lead, but it will be a team effort. You'll all contribute. We have 3 months to create a collection that tells a story. Are we up for this? Slowly, heads nodded. Even Tolu, though she looked like she'd swallowed bitter cola. The next 3 months were intense. Chioma worked 18-hour days, sketching, stitching, revising. The collection took shape. Piece 1, Broken Bracelet, a traditional wrapper with deliberate breaks in the pattern, filled with gold thread, representing loss transformed into beauty. Piece 2, Crutch of Faith, an evening gown with an asymmetrical hem, one side long, one short, celebrating different abilities as elegant, not lacking. Piece 3, Storm Walker, a flowing igbada made from waterproof ankara with rain patterns in silver, honoring those who keep walking through storms. Piece 4, Phoenix Wrapper, her original design perfected. Traditional Nigerian wrapper with a bird rising from flames in gold embroidery. Piece 5, Mother's Hands, a wedding gown incorporating traditional stitching patterns. Every stitch visible, celebrating the work of hands that create with love. 2 weeks before the competition, disaster struck. Chioma came to the studio early one morning to find it vandalized. Fabrics slashed, mannequins toppled, and worst of all, the nearly complete pieces destroyed. Hems ripped out, embroidery torn, beading scattered like tears. She fell to her knees, sobbing. 3 months of work, ruined. Security footage showed a figure in a hoodie breaking in after hours. But the face wasn't visible. Mrs. Beatrice put her arm around Chioma. We can rebuild. We have 2 weeks. It's not enough time, Chioma whispered. We're finished. Emeka arrived an hour later. He surveyed the damage, his face stone. Then he made a call. Close the company for 2 weeks. Everyone, all departments, will work on rebuilding this collection. This is no longer just a competition. It's a statement that you can't destroy what's built with faith. The entire company mobilized. Pattern cutters, administrative staff, even the security guards helped cut fabric. The cook brought meals to the studio, so no one had to leave. Adiz came daily to massage sore hands and backs. Chioma worked through exhaustion, through doubt, through the voice in her head that sounded like Ngozi. You're useless. You'll fail. But louder was another voice. Mama's voice. Light comes through the cracks, baby. Light comes through the cracks. 5 days before departure, the collection was complete. Different from the originals, but somehow better. Refined by the urgency of recreation. The morning they were to fly to South Africa, Emeka pulled Chioma aside. There's something you should know. The security footage, we enhanced it. We know who vandalized the studio. He showed her a clearer image. Chioma's blood ran cold. It was Tolu, the resentful designer. She's been arrested, Emeka said. But I wanted you to know before we leave. She confessed that someone paid her. A woman named Ngozi. Chioma's hands began to shake. Emeka continued. Apparently, your stepmother has been following your success online. She saw your name attached to this competition and decided to sabotage you. She contacted Tolu, offered her 500,000 naira to destroy the collection. But how did she even know about Okonkwo Couture? She saw a photo of you at the company on our social media. Started investigating. When she realized you were succeeding, she couldn't stand it. Rage and hurt battled in Chioma's chest. Even from afar, Ngozi wanted to destroy her. What will happen to her? She's been charged with conspiracy to commit vandalism and theft. She'll face court. But Chioma, Emeka gripped her shoulders gently. Don't let her poison your moment. You've worked too hard. You've overcome too much. Go to South Africa and show the world what you can do. That afternoon, they boarded a plane. Chioma's first time flying. As Lagos disappeared beneath clouds, she felt like she was literally rising above her past. Johannesburg's Sandton Convention Center was overwhelming. Designers from 30 African countries, supermodels, fashion editors from Paris, London, New York, celebrities, cameras everywhere. Chioma felt small, limping through the crowd with her crutch, while around her swirled women in designer clothes, speaking in confident voices about fashion houses and brand deals. You belong here, Emeka reminded her. Remember that. The competition format. Each team had 2 hours to present their collection, tell their story, and answer judges' questions. The judges included industry legends, 3 African designers who'd broken into international markets, and 2 European fashion editors. Okonkwo Couture was scheduled for day 2, afternoon slot. The night before their presentation, Chioma couldn't sleep. She sat on the hotel balcony, looking at Johannesburg's lights, and prayed. Mama, Papa, God, I don't know if I deserve this chance. I'm just a girl with a weak leg and broken past. But if you brought me this far, please, let me honor you tomorrow. The next day, backstage was chaos. Models getting dressed, makeup artists shouting, designers having last-minute panic attacks. Chioma's hands trembled as she helped models into the pieces she'd created. Each garment was more than fabric. It was a prayer, a memory, a piece of her soul. When their turn came, Emeka squeezed her hand. Go show them who Chioma Okafor is. The lights dimmed. Music began, a fusion of traditional Igbo drums and modern beats. The first model walked out wearing broken bracelet. Gasps rippled through the audience. One by one, the pieces came alive on the runway. Not just clothes, but stories. The models weren't just walking. They were embodying resilience. One model with a prosthetic arm wore crutch of faith. Another, a burn survivor, wore storm walker. For the finale, Chioma herself walked out wearing mother's hands, the wedding gown. She moved slowly, her crutch clicking on the runway, head held high. The audience went silent. Then someone stood and began a clap. Then another. Then the entire convention center rose in a standing ovation. Tears streamed down Chioma's face as she stood in the lights, in front of thousands, no longer the girl thrown out in the rain, but a designer, an artist, a survivor. The judges' questions were tough. How do you balance commercial viability with social message? What makes your designs uniquely African rather than African-inspired? Can this aesthetic translate to international markets? Chioma answered each question, her voice growing stronger. She talked about her mother's hands, about finding beauty in brokenness, about how true African fashion wasn't about catering to Western expectations, but celebrating African identity on its own terms. The head judge, a Nigerian woman who dressed Beyoncé and Lupita Nyong'o, looked at Chioma with tears in her eyes. In 30 years of fashion, I've never seen a collection that made me feel this much. You didn't just show us clothes. You showed us souls. That evening, at the awards ceremony, Chioma sat with Emeka and the team, barely breathing. Third place was announced, a designer from Ghana with stunning Kent innovations. Second place, a team from Kenya with modern Maasai-inspired pieces. The host paused dramatically. And the winner of Africa Fashion Week 2024, Rising from Ashes category. Time seemed to stop. Okonkwo Couture, Nigeria. For the Phoenix Rising collection, led by designer Chioma Okafor. The room exploded. Chioma couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Emeka pulled her to her feet, tears streaming down his face. You did it. You did it. She walked to the stage, that same walk with a crutch that used to make people stare with pity. Now, they stared with admiration. Accepting the trophy, she stood at the microphone, looking at thousands of faces. This award isn't just mine, she began, her voice shaking. It belongs to every person who was told they weren't enough. To every disabled person told to hide. To every orphan, every abused child, every person discarded like trash. Her voice grew stronger. 3 years ago, I was thrown out of my home into the rain, told I was useless, a burden, that my dreams were stupid. But God saw me. One man stopped his car and chose kindness. And today, I stand here telling you, you are never the lies people tell you. You are the light God planted in your soul. The applause shook the building, but Chioma barely heard it. She was looking up, whispering, "Mama, we did it. Your dreams didn't die. They just needed my hands to finish them." Back in Lagos, Chioma's face was everywhere. Newspapers, disabled designer wins international award. Magazines, from homeless to fashion icon. Social media exploded with her story. But with fame came something else, Ngozi's attention. 2 weeks after the competition, Chioma was at the Okonkwo Couture headquarters when security called. "Ma, there's a woman here demanding to see you. She says she's your mother." Chioma's blood went cold. "Let her in." Ngozi walked into the showroom like she owned it, dressed in expensive Ankara, probably bought with money from selling Papa's house. Her makeup thick, her gelly wrapped high. She stopped when she saw Chioma, no longer the thin, terrified girl she'd thrown out, but a woman in a designer dress, standing, with her crutch, yes, but standing, in a glass office with her name on the door. Chioma, Ngozi's voice was honey-sweet, the same fake tone she'd used around Papa. "My daughter, look at you. I always knew you'd be successful. Don't." Chioma's voice was ice. "Don't call me daughter. And don't pretend you believed in me." Ngozi's smile faltered. "I know I was difficult, but I was protecting you. Your father's death was hard on all of us." "Protecting me?" Chioma laughed bitterly. "You threw me out in the rain, sold my father's house, stole money meant for my education, paid someone to sabotage my work. That's protection. I never. The police have Tolu's confession. They have bank records of the 500,000 naira you paid her. Don't lie to me." Ngozi's face hardened, the mask finally slipping. "So what? You think you've won? You think your little success story changes what you are? A crippled girl playing dress-up? Get out. I need money." Ngozi spat, her true colors showing. "You're rich now, doing interviews, winning prizes. You owe me. I raised you after your useless mother died. Get out." Chioma's voice rang through the showroom. Staff members appeared, drawn by the commotion. Emeka emerged from his office. "Is there a problem?" Ngozi turned on him, her voice turning wheedling. "Sir, please, I'm her mother. Family. She owes me." "She owes you nothing," Emeka said coldly. "And you're not her mother. You're the woman who threw a child out in a storm. Now leave, or I'll call the police." "You can't do this to me," Ngozi shrieked. "I'll tell everyone she's ungrateful, that she abandoned her family." "Tell whoever you want," Chioma said, her voice steady now. "The truth is already out there. Everyone knows what you did." And Ngozi, she stepped closer. "I forgive you." Ngozi blinked, thrown. "What? I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to carry your poison anymore. You wanted to break me, but you made me stronger. So thank you. Now, get out of my life." Security escorted a screaming Ngozi from the building. Chioma stood watching her go, trembling but triumphant. Emeka put a hand on her shoulder. "You okay?" "Yes." And surprisingly, she was. The confrontation she dreaded had happened, and she'd survived. More than survived, she'd won. That night, Adiz came by Chioma's new apartment. Emeka had helped her find a place in a nice part of Yaba, close enough to work but independent. "You know," Adiz said, sipping tea, "when Emeka first brought you home, I thought this was just his savior complex. He likes to fix things. But you fix yourself, Chioma. You just needed someone to give you space to do it. He saved my life." "No, he gave you a chance. You saved your own life." 1 year later, Chioma stood in front of a new building in Surulere, a fashion school she'd opened with her prize money and investments from Emeka's company. The sign read, "Adana's Legacy, Fashion School for Disabled and Disadvantaged Youth," named after her mother, dedicated to giving chances to people who'd been told they weren't enough. Inside, 20 students, some in wheelchairs, some with prosthetics, some like Chioma with braces and crutches, sat at sewing machines, learning to create beauty with their hands. Mrs. Beatrice had retired from Okonkwo Couture to teach here full-time. I spent 30 years making rich people look good, she'd said. Time to teach people who truly need it. The opening ceremony was packed. Fashion designers from across Nigeria attended, government officials, and regular people, women from the market, students, children. Emeka cut the ribbon, but he insisted Chioma give the speech. A year and a half ago, she began, her voice carrying across the crowd. I stood in the rain thinking my life was over. Today, I stand here knowing it was just beginning. She looked at the students in the front row. This school isn't charity. It's investment. Investment in talent that the world overlooks because it comes in unexpected packages. You're not your disabilities. You are not your poverty. You are not what cruel people said about you. Tears streamed down her face. You are light waiting to shine. And this school will help you shine. The applause was deafening. After the ceremony, an old man approached Chioma. Uncle Festus, her father's friend. Your papa would be so proud, he said, tears in his eyes. And your mama, Chioma, she's smiling from heaven. Uncle Festus, thank you for always believing in me. How can I not? You're Adana's daughter. Light of God. You were always meant to shine. That evening, Chioma visited her parents' grave for the first time since opening the school. She placed flowers, white lilies for Mama, red roses for Papa. Mama, I finished your dream. It's not just me sewing now. It's 20 students learning what you taught me. That every stitch is a prayer. That light comes through cracks. She touched her mother's gravestone. And Papa, I forgive you for bringing Ngozi into our lives. You were broken and looking for help. You didn't know. I understand now. She placed the second half of her mother's broken bracelet on Mama's grave, keeping the first half on her own wrist. I don't need to make it whole again, Mama. The break is part of its beauty now. As she turned to leave, she saw Emeka waiting by his car, giving her space but present if she needed him. Over the past year, their relationship had deepened. Not romantic, not yet, though there were hints of something growing. But genuine friendship built on respect and shared purpose. You ready to go? He asked. Yes, I have a new design to finish. A wedding dress for a bride who lost her arm in an accident. She wants something that celebrates her strength, not hides her prosthetic. Emeka smiled. Of course you do. Come on, designer. Your students are waiting to learn from the best. As they drove through Lagos's chaotic streets, Chioma looked out at the city that had once seemed so hostile. Now it felt like home. Her phone buzzed. An email from Vogue Africa. Feature interview scheduled. They want your full story. Another message. Invitation to speak at UN Women's Conference on Empowerment. Another. Request from Netflix for documentary about your journey. She laughed, overwhelmed. Emeka, this is crazy. A year ago, I was sleeping in your guest room, terrified I'd be thrown out. Now you're exactly where you're supposed to be, he said. Making a difference. Changing lives. Showing the world that disability doesn't mean inability. That night, in her cozy apartment, Chioma sat at her drafting table, sketching new designs by lamplight. On the wall hung her mother's old photo, the award trophy from Africa Fashion Week, and a framed quote she'd written herself. They try to throw me away, but God said I was a seed. And seeds that are buried don't die. They grow. She picked up her phone and posted on Instagram. To everyone who's ever been told they're not enough, you are. To everyone kicked out, cast aside, called a burden, you're a blessing waiting to bloom. To everyone walking with a limp, with scars, with broken parts, you're not broken. You're breaking through. This is for you. Keep walking. Keep creating. Keep believing. Your light will shine. I promise. Chioma. Within minutes, thousands of responses flooded in. Stories from around the world. People who'd been abused, abandoned, dismissed. All finding hope in her words. And Chioma realized this was the real prize. Not the trophy, not the fame, not the money, but the chance to hold a light for others walking through their own storms. Just like Emeka had done for her that rainy night. The invitation was printed on expensive cardstock, gold lettering on cream paper. You are cordially invited to the wedding of Chioma Adana Okafor and Emeka Chukwudi Okonkwo. Yes, that had happened. Slowly, Carefully, their friendship had bloomed into love. The kind built on respect, shared values, and genuine partnership. Emeka had proposed at the school, got down on one knee in front of all the students, teachers, and staff. Chioma, you taught me that love isn't about saving someone. It's about standing beside them while they save themselves. Will you let me stand beside you forever? She'd said yes, laughing and crying simultaneously. Now, on her wedding day, she wore mother's hands. The gown she designed for the competition altered to fit her perfectly. Every visible stitch honoring the women whose hands had shaped her. Adiz was her maid of honor. Mrs. Beatrice wept openly. The students from Adana's legacy served as flower girls and ring bearers. As Chioma walked down the aisle, yes, walked, her crutch decorated with gold ribbons and flowers, she saw faces from every part of her journey. Uncle Festus, beaming with pride. Neighbors from her old compound who'd watched her grow up. Designers she'd worked with. Students she'd taught. Even some of the models who'd worn her designs. But the most surprising guest sat in the back row, looking uncomfortable in a simple dress. Ngozi. Chioma had sent the invitation after much thought. Not because she'd forgotten what Ngozi had done, but because forgiveness meant letting go completely. Ngozi hadn't responded, but she'd come. And as Chioma passed her row, their eyes met. Ngozi's were full of tears and regret. Chioma nodded once, acknowledgement without bitterness, and continued forward. At the altar, Emeka's eyes were wet. You're beautiful, he whispered. I'm broken, she whispered back, smiling. Remember? No, your light coming through cracks. There's a difference. The pastor, who knew their story, spoke about grace, redemption, and how God uses the rejected stones to build his greatest monuments. When it came time for vows, Chioma spoke from her heart. Emeka, you saw me when I was invisible. You believed in me when I'd stopped believing in myself. But more than that, you taught me that love isn't about being saved. It's about being seen, valued, and celebrated exactly as you are. Today, I promise to stand beside you, to build with you, to create beauty with you. Not as your charity case, but as your equal partner. I love you. Emeka's vows were equally moving. Chioma, the night I found you in the rain, I thought I was helping someone in need. I didn't know God was sending me the person who would teach me what true strength looks like. You've shown me that resilience isn't about never falling. It's about rising every single time. Today, I promise to honor your strength, celebrate your gifts, and walk beside you through every storm. You're my light. I love you. When they were pronounced husband and wife, the church erupted in celebration. Drums played. Women ululated. Children threw flowers. The reception was held at the school. Chioma had insisted. This is where my new life truly began, where Mama's legacy lives on. During the reception, something unexpected happened. Ngozi approached the head table, her face streaked with tears, her expensive clothes looking somehow shabby in the joyful atmosphere. Chioma, she said quietly, may I speak with you? The music dimmed. Guests turned to watch. Emeka tensed, ready to intervene, but Chioma touched his hand gently. Let her speak. Ngozi stood before the microphone, her voice shaking. I came today not to celebrate. I have no right to celebrate. I came to apologize publicly for what I did. She turned to face Chioma. I threw you out like trash. I sold your father's property and stole your money. I tried to destroy your work because I couldn't stand seeing you succeed where I had failed. I was jealous, bitter, and cruel. Her voice broke. I told myself I had reasons, that you were a burden, that I deserved your father's things because I'd married him. But the truth is simpler and uglier. I was a wicked woman who hurt a child because it made me feel powerful. The room was silent except for her crying. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I need to say this. Chioma Okafor, you are everything I could never be. Strong, talented, kind despite what was done to you. Your mother raised a queen, and I tried to convince you that you were nothing. I was wrong. So wrong. She stepped back from the microphone. That's all. I'll leave now. But Chioma stood up, walked over to Ngozi, and did something that made everyone gasp. She embraced her. I forgave you long ago, Ngozi, Chioma said softly. Not because you deserved it, but because carrying hatred was heavier than my crutch. You're welcome to stay. Join the celebration. But know this, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing not to let your cruelty define my future. Ngozi sobbed in her arms. I don't deserve this. I don't deserve your grace. None of us deserve grace, Chioma said. That's why it's called grace. The moment was captured by photographers. The image of Chioma, radiant in her wedding gown, embracing the woman who'd tried to destroy her, and it would later become iconic. A symbol of forgiveness that inspired thousands. As the party continued, Chioma pulled Emeka aside. There's something I want to do. She called all the students from Adana's legacy onto the stage. 20 young people, some in wheelchairs, some with prosthetics, all with disabilities that society had told them made them less. When I opened this school, Chioma addressed the crowd, I said it wasn't charity. It was investment. Today, I want to announce something. Okonkwo Couture is launching a new subsidiary, Adana's Pride, a fashion house run entirely by disabled designers, showcasing that disability and excellence aren't opposites. The students gasped. The crowd erupted in applause. These 20 young people will be the founding designers. They'll have salaries, benefits, creative control, and their first collection will debut at Lagos Fashion Week next month. Emeka stood beside her, beaming. I couldn't be prouder to support this vision. The fashion world needs diverse voices, diverse bodies, diverse abilities. It's time we stopped asking disabled people to fit into fashion and started making fashion fit them. One of the students, a girl named Amina with cerebral palsy who used a wheelchair, rolled up to the microphone, her speech slightly slurred but her message clear. Miss Chioma, you showed us we're not broken. We're just differently built. Thank you for seeing our light. By the time the reception ended, Chioma's feet hurt, her leg ached, but her heart was full to bursting. As she and Emeka left for their honeymoon, rice and flowers raining down on them, she looked back one last time at the school, at the banner that read, "Where cracks become light," at the faces of students who now believed they could be anything, at Ngozi, sitting alone at a back table, crying but for the first time, not out of self-pity, out of genuine remorse. At the legacy her mother had started with a sewing machine in a small compound, now grown into something that would change countless lives. Ready, Mrs. Okonkwo? Emeka asked, helping her into the car. I've been ready my whole life, she said, laughing. I just didn't know it. 5 years after the wedding, Chioma stood at the United Nations headquarters in New York, addressing a packed auditorium for the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. Behind her, a screen showed her journey. The rainy night in Lagos, her early sketches, the competition win, the school, the wedding, and now, her global empire. Adana's Pride had grown beyond anyone's expectations. Stores in 30 countries, partnerships with major brands, a documentary series on Netflix. But most importantly, over 500 disabled designers employed worldwide, creating fashion that celebrated rather than hid their differences. When I was 19, Chioma told the UN Assembly, a woman I trusted told me I was useless because of my disability. For years, part of me believed her. But here's what I've learned. The world doesn't need us to be perfect. It needs us to be present, to show up with our crutches, our wheelchairs, our scars, our differences, and create anyway. She gestured to the screen showing photos of her designers. These are people the fashion industry overlooked, told they weren't model material, weren't designer material, weren't commercially viable, but they're creating some of the most innovative, beautiful fashion in the world today. Because different perspectives create different art, and the world desperately needs different art. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. After the speech, journalists swarmed her for interviews. How does it feel to be named one of Time magazine's 100 most influential people? What's next for Adana's Pride? Any advice for disabled youth who want to enter creative fields? Chioma answered each question with the grace she'd learned over years of being in the spotlight. But the question that made her pause came from a young Nigerian journalist. Miss Chioma, if you could go back to that night in the rain, knowing everything that would happen after, the success, the fame, the impact, Would you change anything? Chioma thought carefully. No, because that night taught me something crucial. Our lowest moments often become our greatest teachers. I wouldn't have this empathy, this drive, this purpose if I hadn't experienced that depth of despair. So no, I wouldn't change it. I would just tell my younger self, hold on. Light is coming. Back in Lagos, Adana's legacy had expanded. No longer just a fashion school, it now included a counseling center for abuse survivors, a legal aid clinic helping disabled people fight discrimination, a microfinance program funding disabled entrepreneurs, a shelter for youth thrown out by their families. The day Chioma returned from New York, she visited the shelter. 20 young people currently live there, all between 14 and 21, all disabled, all rejected by families. She knew each of their names, their stories, their dreams. Miss Chioma, a 16-year-old named Blessing, rolled up in her wheelchair. We watched your UN speech online. You were amazing. Chioma knelt down to Blessing's level. You'll be giving speeches like that one day, Blessing. I believe it, but I can't even walk. Neither can I, not properly. But we're here, aren't we? Still moving forward. That's what matters. That evening, at home with Emeka, they bought a beautiful house in Lekki, designed to be fully accessible. She sat at her design studio, working on sketches for the next collection. Emeka brought her tea. You know, I was thinking about something. That night, I found you in the rain. What made me stop? I'd driven past people in need before, we all have in Lagos. But something about you made me stop that night. Chioma looked up. What do you think it was? You were holding those sketches. Even soaking wet, even collapsed on the ground, you were clutching them. And I thought, this person hasn't given up. She still has dreams worth protecting. That's when I knew I had to help. Chioma smiled. My mother always said, hold on to your dreams, even when you can't hold anything else. I didn't know those what sketches would save my life. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes after years of true partnership. Then Chioma said quietly, Emeka, I want to find other girls in the rain. Not literally, though we could do that too. But I want to expand our school system. Create Adana's legacy branches in every state in Nigeria. Then across Africa. Give opportunities before people hit rock bottom. He smiled. I knew you'd want to do something like this. Which is why I already started the paperwork. We can fund 5 new branches this year. She laughed and kissed him. How did I get so lucky? Lucky. Chioma, you earned every good thing in your life through talent and determination. No, she corrected gently. I earned some of it. But the rest? That was grace. Divine intervention. God seeing me when no one else did. She pulled out her mother's half of the broken bracelet, which she still wore every day. Mama always said light comes through cracks. I understand now. She wasn't just talking about physical cracks, broken things, broken people. She meant the cracks in our plans, our expectations, our comfortable lives. When those crack open, that's when God's light can finally get in. That night, before bed, Chioma wrote in her journal, a habit she'd maintained since those early days at Emeka's house. Der Manga. Today, I spoke at the UN. Thousands of people heard your words through my voice. Every stitch is a prayer. Light comes through cracks. So with your heart, not with fear. Your legacy isn't just in the clothes we make. It's in every life we touch, every rejected person we embrace, every disabled youth who discovers they're not broken, just beautifully different. I forgave Ngozi today. Truly, finally, completely. Not because she deserved it, but because carrying that weight was preventing me from flying as high as I could. Papa, if you can hear this, I understand now why you married her. You were drowning in grief, and she offered a hand. You couldn't see it was pulling you under. I forgive you for that. I forgive you for not protecting me. You were just a broken man trying to survive. And God, thank you for that rainy night, for Emeka's kindness, for every closed door that led me to the right open one, for making my mess into a message, my test into a testimony. Tomorrow, we start building the next branch of Adana's legacy. More students, more designers, more light spreading through more cracks. This is what resurrection looks like. Not erasing the scars, but letting them shine. With all my love, Chioma. She closed the journal and looked at the framed photo on her desk. Young Chioma with her mother at the sewing machine. Both smiling, both full of dreams they didn't know would come true decades later through hands that refused to stop creating. "We did it, Mama," she whispered. "Your light didn't die with you. It multiplied." Some stories begin with endings. With rain and rejection, with doors slammed shut and voices saying you're not enough. But those endings are often the beginnings God has been waiting to write. Chioma Okafor's journey teaches us that disability is not inability. Different bodies create different art, different perspectives, different beauty. The world needs all of it. Rejection can be redirection. The house Chioma was thrown from led her to the mansion that welcomed her. The stepmother who rejected her pushed her toward the man who would truly see her. Forgiveness is freedom. Not for the person who hurt you, but for yourself. Chioma couldn't fly until she released the weight of hatred. Light really does come through cracks. Your broken places, your scars, your disabilities, your trauma. These aren't defects. They're where the light gets in. Where God shows up. Where your story becomes powerful enough to change the world. One person's kindness can save a life. Emeka stopping his car that rainy night changed everything. Never underestimate the power of seeing someone, truly seeing them, and choosing compassion. Your past doesn't define your future. Chioma went from homeless to UN speaker, from crippled burden to celebrated designer, from rejected to respected. Your story isn't over until God says it's over. If you're reading this and you're in your own rain right now, thrown out, cast aside, called worthless, hear this. You're not what they said you are. You are what God created you to be. Unique, valuable, full of light waiting to shine. Your crutches, your scars, your broken parts, they're not flaws. They're features. They're what make your light different from everyone else's. Hold on. Keep creating. Keep believing. Your rain will end. Your dawn is coming. And when you rise, because you will rise, remember those still in the rain. Stop your car for them. See them. Help them. Because we're all just walking each other home, one act of kindness at a time.